Have you ever opened the Bible with the hope of finding guidance, only to feel confused, distant, or overwhelmed by its language? Have you ever wondered how ancient stories about deserts, kings, and prophets could possibly apply to your modern life? Your bills, your family struggles, stresses, and anxiety, your desire for peace? This is a struggle that many share, whether they were raised with the Bible or just starting out. We sense and believe that the Bible contains wisdom, but more often the words feel locked, mysterious, and even contradictory. What if those words aren't locked at all? What if the Bible is a living, breathing guidebook, one that speaks directly to your inner life right now? Emmet Fox, one of the great spiritual teachers of the 20th century, devoted much of his work to showing this. He taught that the Bible isn't a book of dry history, nor simply a religious manual. It is, at its core, a handbook for transformation. Every story, every verse, every chapter, he explained, symbolizes something within us. When rightly interpreted, the Bible becomes a mirror, shows us our fears and hopes, our bondage and freedom, our battles and our victories. This book is written to help you unlock those symbols and practice their power. Each chapter presents a spiritual key. These keys are simple, practical truths that open the Bible's deeper meaning. Some of them you may have heard in passing: the importance of faith, forgiveness, love, and prayer. Others may surprise you: the law of sowing and reaping, the presence of Christ within, the principle of the golden key. Each one is designed not just to be understood, but to be practiced. Every third chapter includes a story because principles come alive in stories. These will be stories from the author's experience and also parable-like tales or glimpses of real people who discovered what happens when you apply these truths. Stories show us ourselves. They make spiritual ideas real. At the close of each chapter, you'll also find a short exercise. These aren't complicated rituals or long assignments. They're simple actions you can take, words to repeat, reflections to hold, short practices to try. Think of them as small keys that begin to open much larger doors. The way to use this book is to listen through it once in its entirety, then go back and find the chapter and exercise that contains your most pressing present need. Then practice that exercise until it becomes automatic, meaning instead of defaulting back to the norm, fear, worry, stress, etc., you default to your newly programmed way of thinking. This takes time for each new thought to become habit. It can take anywhere from a week to months for each new thought habit to be planted and grow. The time it takes is directly proportional to the feeling and effort you practice with. So be patient with yourself. After you've ingrained one new thought habit, then choose another, and then another, until this manual or you are complete. The Bible's promise isn't distant or abstract. It's immediate. Peace where there was fear, strength where there was weakness, light where there was confusion. As you walk through these chapters, you'll discover that the Bible is alive. It speaks to your heart, your mind, and your spirit right now. The more you practice these principles, the more you'll see transformation unfolding in your own life. So let us begin with open hearts, curious minds, and a willingness to see the Bible not as a closed book of the past, but as a very present living message for today. The keys are already in your hands. Now it's time to use them. Chapter 1. The Bible as a Living Guide. The first key to understanding the Bible is to realize that it isn't just a record of historical events. Of course, it contains history, but its real purpose isn't to tell us what happened in the past. It's to show us what can happen in our own lives. The Bible is a spiritual textbook written in the language of symbol, story, and parable. Its characters, battles, journeys, and promises describe the inner drama of every human being. When you read about Israel's captivity in Egypt, you're also reading about the moments when you feel trapped in fear, habit, or despair. When you hear of the promised land, you're hearing about your own potential, the state of freedom and peace that God intends for us all. David and Goliath isn't just about a shepherd boy and a giant warrior. It's about the courage inside you that can overcome the towering fears of your life. This is what Fox called spiritual interpretation. Without it, the Bible can seem confusing or even irrelevant. With it, the Bible becomes personal and practical. Suddenly you realize that you aren't just reading about someone else long ago. You're reading about yourself, your own thoughts, your choices, your struggles, and victories. Think of it this way. Every character is symbolic to your life. Moses represents the divine impulse towards freedom. Pharaoh represents stubbornness and pride. The disciples represent qualities of faith, love, and wisdom developing within you. When seen this way, the Bible becomes a mirror of the soul and a guide to daily living. This approach doesn't diminish the Bible, it deepens it. Instead of being bound to debates about literal history, you begin to see the timeless universal principles that apply to every human being in every age. This is why the Bible is called the living word. The Bible isn't locked in the past, it's alive in the present. Take a short Bible passage, just one verse or familiar story. Ask yourself, if this is about me, what does it mean? Write down one sentence that connects it to your life right now. This is done to begin the practice of looking at the Bible spiritually. Chapter 2, The Principle of the Golden Key. Perhaps Emmet Fox's most famous teaching is what he called the Golden Key. It's so simple that most overlook its power, but if you practice it faithfully, it can transform every situation of your life. The principle is this: when you're faced with trouble, don't think about the problem, think about God instead. That's all. Turn your thoughts away from fear, confusion, struggle, etc., and fix them on God. God's wisdom, God's love, God's power, any of God's higher attributes. Why does this work? Because your mind can't serve two masters. You can't think on fear and faith at the same time. What you think about grows stronger in your consciousness. If you rehearse the problem endlessly, you magnify it. But if you deliberately turn to God, you invite higher wisdom to take hold. The golden key isn't about pretending your problems don't exist. It's about refusing to give the problem power over your life. It's about shifting the center of attention from fear to God. And when you do this, solutions begin to emerge, often in ways you could not have possibly foreseen. Fox insisted that anyone can do this anywhere at any time. You don't need special training or long prayers. You only need the willingness to change your focus. The very moment you stop thinking about the problem and think about God instead, the golden key is working. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You'll find yourself reaching for the golden key not just in emergencies, but in everyday irritations, challenges, and decisions. Life begins to take on a new rhythm: less panic, more peace; less anxiety, more trust. Exercise. Whenever fear or worry arises today, pause and silently repeat, God is with me now. God is guiding me. God is my strength. Repeat this 3 times, and if the thoughts and feelings persist, continue until your mind begins to quiet. Chapter 3, The Power of Spiritual Interpretation. If the golden key is the practice, spiritual interpretation is the lens. Without this lens, the Bible can seem like a confusing collection of stories. With it, the Bible becomes a treasure chest of wisdom. Fox taught that every story in the Bible has 2 layers, the outer story and the inner meaning. The outer story may be historical, symbolic, or parabolic, but the inner meaning is always spiritual. The inner meaning speaks directly to your mind, heart, and experience. Take, for instance, the story of Exodus. Literally, it was about Moses leading the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. Spiritually, how it can relate to us is how our own soul can be led out of bondage. Egypt represents the mental state of fear, resentment, addiction, or any low thought or vibration that enslaves you. Moses represents the divine impulse within you that longs for freedom. The wilderness journey represents the process of struggle and growth that freedom requires. The promised land represents the state of peace and harmony that God intends for you on the other side of your struggle. When you read the Bible spiritually, you stop asking, did this really happen? and you start asking, how can this relate to me and my life right now? Suddenly, the ancient texts feel alive. It becomes a mirror in which you see your own journey reflected. Here's a story. Sarah was a young professional who constantly feared losing her job. Every rumor of layoffs sent her into sleepless nights. The Bible felt distant to her until one day she read the story of Daniel in the lion's den. At first, she saw only an ancient tale of a man surrounded by wild beasts, but a friend encouraged her to look deeper, to put herself in the story. It was revealed to her that the lions represented her fears, loud, threatening, circling her. Daniel represented the choice to remain calm and faithful even when danger loomed. For the first time, Sarah saw herself in the story. The lions weren't in a den of stone, they were in her mind. She began to practice the golden key, repeating in anxious moments, God is with me, God is my security. Slowly the lions quieted. Even when her company went through layoffs, she faced it with calm. Her job remained, but more importantly, her sense of peace deepened. She discovered that her real security was never the job. It was her trust in God. Exercise. Choose one Bible story you know well. Write down who the main character represents in your own inner life. Write down what the obstacle or enemy represents. Reflect for a few minutes. How does this story describe your current journey? Again, this practice is for seeing the Bible through your spiritual eyes and not literal. Chapter 4. God as the source of supply. One of the deepest human concerns is supply. Money, resources, opportunities, support. Almost everyone worries at some point about not having enough. But the Bible insists that God is our never-ending true source. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Psalms 23. These words aren't just poetic comfort, they describe a spiritual law. Emmet Fox explained that when we forget God as our source, we inevitably slip into fear. We begin to believe our job, another person, or even chance is the source of our supply. This belief makes us anxious and defensive. But when we remember that God alone is the fountain of our life, we're freed from fear of lack. Supply comes through channels: employment, relationships, opportunities. The channel isn't the source. The source is spirit, and spirit never runs dry. Just as the sun doesn't depend on the windows through which its rays shine, so God's supply doesn't depend on one job, one person, or one situation. If one channel closes, another opens. The key is to place your attention on God's abundance rather than your fear of lack. Fear narrows and blocks the flow of life. Faith expands and opens it. The Bible is full of promises that affirm this truth. The Bible states, "Seek you first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you." When you put God first in your thought, everything else falls into place. This doesn't mean you sit idly waiting for money or opportunity to fall from the sky. It means that as you turn your thoughts towards God, your mind becomes clear, your intuition sharp, and your actions guided. You are led towards wise decisions and open doors. Supply flows naturally when fear is replaced by trust. Exercise. Whenever you feel fear about money or lack, pause and affirm, God is my source. My supply is secure. Repeat 3 times or until your heart grows lighter. If anything you've listened to so far resonates with you, drop us a like and subscribe to our channel. Chapter 5. Healing through right thinking. Health is one of the greatest desires for us all. People long for relief from pain, restoration of energy, freedom from disease. The Bible teaches, and Fox confirmed, that true healing begins in the mind. As a person thinks in their heart, so are they. This doesn't mean we should ignore medical help. Medicine and prayer can work together, but the deepest root of health lies in consciousness. Illness often arises or is worsened by fear, resentment, stress, and destructive emotions. On the other hand, peace, forgiveness, and love create harmony that the body reflects. Fox taught that thought is creative power. Every thought is a seed planted in your body as well as in your circumstances. When you hold thoughts of anger or fear, they generate tension, lowering vitality. When you hold thoughts of love and peace, they create balance and strength. The mind and body aren't separate. They're connected by law. Jesus demonstrated this truth in his healing work. Again and again he said, "Your faith has made you whole." He recognized that healing wasn't only about the physical body, but about the consciousness of the individual. Faith, right thinking aligned with God, opened the way for restoration. Right thinking doesn't mean pretending pain doesn't exist. It means affirming God's healing even when pain is present. It means knowing that health isn't something to be manufactured. It's the natural state of the soul when fear and error are released and we align with God. This isn't always instant. Healing can be gradual. But every time you align your thought with the divine truth, you're opening yourself to greater harmony. Grows in the mind, the body responds. Exercise. When you feel tension or illness, pause and affirm slowly, "God's life is flowing through me now. I am whole. I am well." Breathe deeply and imagine this truth soaking into every cell. Chapter 6. Freedom from Fear. Fear is a great tyrant of human life. It paralyzes, distorts, and blinds us. The Bible acknowledges fear, but constantly reminds us, "Fear not, for I am with you." Fox taught that fear is a misuse of the imagination. Instead of envisioning good, we rehearse disaster. We create pictures in the mind of loss, danger, or failure, and then live in the shadow of those pictures. Fear drains energy, poisons decisions, and keeps us from hearing God's quiet voice of guidance. The antidote isn't to fight fear directly. Fighting often strengthens what we resist. The antidote is to lift thought to God. Fear is like darkness. You don't chase darkness out of a room. You turn on the light. And God is the light. So when you remember God's presence, fear naturally dissolves. This is where the golden key is so powerful. Instead of turning over fears in your mind, you deliberately shift focus to God. The moment you do, you weaken fear's hold. The more you practice, the more you'll discover that courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to bow to it. Here's a story. James, a man I knew, had dreaded flying since childhood. Even the thought of boarding a plane filled him with panic. When a close friend invited him to a wedding across the country, James wanted desperately to go but felt trapped. A mentor reminded him of the golden key. "Don't fight the fear," she said. "Turn your thoughts to God. When fear rises, just affirm, God is here. God is protecting me." At first, James felt foolish. On the day of the flight, his hands shook as he buckled his seatbelt. The engines roared and panic rose. He began repeating the affirmation silently over and over. For the first 20 minutes, the fear surged, but he kept repeating. Then he noticed his breath slowing. The grip in his chest loosened. Looking out of the window, he saw clouds glowing in the sun and realized he was calm. The fear returned at moments, but it never overwhelmed him ever again. Over time, James flew more often, always practicing the golden key. He discovered that courage didn't mean erasing fear, but choosing trust in the midst of it. Exercise. When fear arises, don't argue with it. Simply pause and say, "God is here. God is my protection." Repeat 3 times or until peace returns. Chapter 7. The Power of Forgiveness. Few lessons in the Bible are as central as forgiveness, and fewer still are as difficult to practice. From Genesis to the Gospels, forgiveness is presented as the key to freedom, but many resist it, holding tightly to resentment. Why? Because forgiving feels like losing. It feels as though we're letting someone off the hook. Emmet Fox insisted that forgiveness isn't about excusing behavior or denying pain. It's about freeing yourself. When you cling to resentment, You are tied to the very person or event that hurt you. It's as if a chain binds you to the past. Forgiveness is breaking that chain. Jesus was explicit. Forgive and you shall be forgiven. This doesn't mean that God withholds forgiveness until you comply, as many misinterpret this passage. What it means is your own ability to receive God's forgiveness is blocked until you extend it to others. Forgiveness is like breathing. You inhale and exhale. If you refuse to exhale, to let go of resentment, you can't fully inhale the fresh air of peace. Resentment is a poison you drink, hoping the other person will suffer. Forgiveness is the antidote. It may not change the other person. It may not erase the memory. But it releases the grip of bitterness on your soul. That release clears the way for healing and blessing to flow. Fox often reminded his listeners that the person hardest to forgive is often the one that you need to forgive the most. The deeper the wound, the more powerful the release. Forgiveness isn't always instant. It may require repetition. But each time you choose to release, the burdens lighten. Exercise. Think of one person you struggle to forgive. Whisper quietly, I release you to God. I am free and you are free. I forgive you. Repeat 3 times or until the heaviness begins to lift. Chapter 8. The Kingdom Within. When Jesus declared, the kingdom of God is within you, he revealed one of the most radical truths in all of Scripture. The kingdom is not out there, in a distant heaven, in a far-off age, in an external authority, sitting on a throne. It's within. It's within you. It's within each of us. This means that peace, wisdom, and fulfillment aren't dependent on outer conditions. They already exist in your inner life. The tragedy is that most people search endlessly outside of themselves. People search endlessly outside themselves, chasing money, approval, status, or pleasure, while the treasure lies there untouched inside. Fox explained that discovering the inner kingdom is like finding a well in the desert. No matter what the outer circumstances may be, barren, dry, threatening, you have a source within that cannot run dry. How do you find this kingdom? By turning inward in prayer, meditation, and quiet trust. By pausing in stillness and remembering, God's life is in me. God's presence fills me. The more you practice, the more you feel that presence. Outer life begins to shift as your inner life grows strong in God. The inner kingdom isn't escapism, as some have said. It's the most practical resource you have. When you discover your strength within, you stop being a victim of outer conditions. You carry peace into situations where others are frantic. You bring clarity into confusion, courage into fear, love into conflict. This is how the inner kingdom transforms the outer world. Exercise. Spend 5 minutes today in silence. Close your eyes and repeat slowly. The kingdom of God is within me now. Let the words sink in until you feel a quiet strength arise. Chapter 9. The Law of Attraction and Thought. The Bible often describes life in terms of sowing and reaping. Whatsoever a person sows, that they shall also reap. This is more than agricultural advice. It's a description of spiritual law. Every thought you sow in your mind produces after its kind. Fox explained that thought is magnetic. Like attracts like. Fear attracts more fear. Faith attracts more faith. Resentment attracts conflict. Forgiveness attracts peace. This principle often is called the law of attraction. It's not magic or wishful thinking. It's the natural law of consciousness. The Bible urges us to direct thoughts wisely. It states, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, think on these things. By dwelling on good, you draw good into your life. By dwelling on fear, you invite trouble. This is why it's so important to guard your thoughts. Just like a farmer chooses good seed, you must choose uplifting thoughts. Every thought planted in your mind grows whether you notice it or not. Here's a story. Maria dreamed of starting a bakery. She loved baking bread and pastries, and friends urged her to open a shop. But her mind swirled with doubt. What if I fail? What if no one comes? What if I lose everything? A friend reminded her of Fox's teaching. You're planting seeds with those thoughts. If you keep planting weeds of fear, how can you expect a harvest of success? Maria decided to change her mental planting. Each morning she affirmed, God's abundance flows through me. My work blesses others. My bakery is a success in God's plan. She pictured customers smiling, smelling the fresh bread, enjoying her pastries. 6 months later, her bakery opened. The first week was slow, but she persisted in her affirmations. Gradually, word spread. People came back, brought friends, and soon her little shop was thriving. Looking back, Maria realized that the biggest shift wasn't in recipes or marketing. It was in her thoughts. She had stopped planting fear and started planting faith. The harvest naturally followed. Exercise. Today, catch one negative thought and replace it with a positive affirmation. For example, instead of, I can't handle this, say, I can do all things through God who strengthens me. Chapter 10. The Practice of Daily Prayer. Prayer is the heartbeat of spiritual life. It's not meant to be reserved for emergencies or Sunday services only. True prayer is daily bread, nourishment for the mind and spirit that keeps you aligned with God. Emmet Fox emphasized that prayer isn't begging a distant deity to change circumstances. It's aligning your thought with divine truth. He called it the spiritual law of adjustment. Because when you pray, you adjust your mind to God's presence, and your outer life adjusts accordingly. Just as you wouldn't think of skipping meals or going days without water, you should never go without prayer. It cleanses the mind of clutter, fear, and resentment. It restores perspective, strengthens courage, and opens the door to inspiration. The Bible assures us, ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. A narrator's note here. I have used that scripture myself thousands of times, perhaps tens of thousands of times, and it has never failed me. Daily prayer isn't about length or consistency. A heartfelt 5 minutes can do more for the soul than an hour of distracted words. What matters is sincerity, focus, and the willingness to let God's truth replace your own fearful thoughts. Prayer also teaches us to listen. Many people think of prayer only as talking, giving God a list of requests. But the deepest prayer includes silence, sitting quietly, letting your mind grow still, and allowing God's presence to fill you. In these quiet moments, guidance comes, ideas arrive, peace flows. The more you practice daily prayer, the more natural it becomes. You stop waiting for crisis and instead live in a steady rhythm of communion with God. Life becomes smoother, not because there are no challenges, but because you're grounded in the source of strength at every step. Exercise. Today, set aside 3 minutes for prayer. Say simply, God guide me, God strengthen me, God use me. Then sit quietly for a minute, trusting that guidance will come. Chapter 11. Love as the Fulfillment of the Law. When Jesus was asked what commandment mattered most, he summed up the law of life in one sentence: love one another. Love, he said, is the fulfillment of all the law. This isn't the shallow love of sentiment or fleeting affection. It's a deep recognition of God's presence in others. To love is to see beyond surface flaws and acknowledge the divine spark in every soul. It's the decision to align with God's nature, which is love itself. Emmet Fox taught that love is the most powerful healing force in existence. Where love is present, fear dissolves, bitterness melts, and harmony returns. Love reconciles broken relationships, softens hardened hearts, and heals the one who gives it as much as the one who receives it. Hatred and criticism may feel powerful, but they are destructive. They cut us off from the flow of life. Love reconnects us. It clears blockages, restores balance, and allows God's good to flow freely through us. Love isn't limited to those who are kind or easy to get along with. Jesus called us to love even our enemies, not because their actions are right, but because hatred poisons the one who holds it. To love doesn't mean approving harmful behavior. It means choosing to see beyond it, affirming that the person's true identity is a child of God. The practice of love transforms everyday life. It changes how you speak to strangers, how you respond to irritation, how you treat those who challenge you. It turns ordinary interactions into holy ground. Love isn't just the greatest commandment, it's the greatest power. Exercise. Think of one difficult person in your life. Silently bless them with these words. God's love is working in you. God's peace is with you. Repeat this daily until peace rests in you where that person is concerned. Chapter 12. Overcoming obstacles. Life is full of obstacles. Some are small irritations, others feel like towering walls. The Bible is filled with such images. Seas that must be parted, giants that must be faced, walls that must fall. These aren't just ancient events. They are metaphors for challenges that you and I face today. Fox explained that every obstacle is an opportunity to apply spiritual law. Obstacles may look solid, but they're made of fear. The moment you turn to God, you discover that what seemed impossible begins to shift. Just as the Israelites marched around Jericho until the walls collapsed, you too can see your walls fall through persistence and faith. Obstacles aren't punishments, they are invitations, chances to grow stronger, to practice trust, to discover God's power in action, and to discover your power in God. Without obstacles, faith would remain theory. With them, faith becomes reality. The key isn't to obsess over the obstacle, but to affirm God's presence. The more you stare at the wall, the bigger it appears. But when you shift your gaze to God, the wall begins to lose power. Here's a story. David dreamed of finishing college. He was the first in his family to attend, and he longed to earn a degree. But every semester seemed like a financial battle. Tuition bills felt like towering walls. More than once he considered giving up. One day, while reading Joshua's story of Jericho, he noticed something new. The walls fell not by brute force, but by obedience to God's direction. David decided to stop obsessing about the money and instead focus on God's ability to make a way. Each morning he prayed, God makes a way where there is no way. God is my supply. To his surprise, small opportunities began to appear. A scholarship, a part-time job, a relative that offered support. Each semester the needed funds came, sometimes at the last moment. By the time he graduated, David realized that the obstacle had been more mental than material. The wall was fear. Once he turned to God, the way opened. Exercise. Think of one obstacle you face right now. Say aloud, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Repeat until peace and confidence return. Chapter 13, The Christ Within. One of the greatest revelations of the Bible is the presence of Christ. Too often, people think of Christ only as a man who lived long ago, but Fox explained that Christ is more than history. Christ is the divine nature within every soul, the presence of God individualized in you. You see, Christ isn't a name, it's more of a title. The definition of Christ is the Anointed One. When the Apostle Paul spoke of Christ in you, the hope of glory, he was pointing to a truth far greater than most realize. You aren't merely humans stumbling through life. You carry with you a spark of divinity, wisdom, love, power, and creativity. This isn't a gift given only to a few saints. It's the birthright of each and every one of us as children of God. Recognizing the Christ within changes everything. No longer do you see yourself as weak or helpless. You realize that you have access to divine wisdom for every decision, divine love for every relationship, divine strength for every challenge. Christ isn't something to be achieved, but something to be awakened. When you begin to affirm this truth, the Christ within grows stronger in your awareness. You start to act with greater compassion, clarity, and courage. Old habits lose their grip. You see yourself differently, and you see others differently as well. For if Christ is in you, then Christ is also in them. This recognition dissolves judgment and awakens compassion. You no longer view people only by their flaws or mistakes. You see the deeper truth. They are also bearers of God's presence. Exercise. Stand in front of a mirror. Look directly in your eyes and say, "The Christ in me is strong, wise, and free." Repeat it until you feel a shift in your awareness. Chapter 14. Living by faith, not by sight. The Bible declares we walk by faith, not by sight. This is one of the clearest descriptions of spiritual living. Sight is limited to what the senses perceive. Faith sees beyond. Fox taught that appearances are often deceptive. You may look around and see lack, conflict, or confusion. Sight insists these conditions are final, but faith knows that God's power is greater. It's infinite. Faith sees the invisible good that isn't yet visible. Living by faith means making decisions from trust rather than fear. It means refusing to let appearances dictate your attitude. If the bank account looks empty, faith says, "God is my source." If the body feels weak, faith says, "God's health lives in me." If relationships look strained, faith says, "God's love restores harmony." Faith isn't blind optimism. It's intelligent reliance on divine law. In the same way you trust gravity to work even when you can't see it, you trust air that you breathe to keep you alive that you can't see. You should trust spiritual law to operate even when results aren't visible. The more you walk by faith, the more appearances shift to reflect that higher truth. Walking by faith requires persistence. Doubt will whisper, "Look at the evidence." Fear will point to obstacles. But each time you choose to lean on God's promise instead of appearances, your faith grows stronger. Over time, you build a foundation of trust that no storm can shake. Exercise. When faced with a troubling appearance today, pause and affirm, "I walk by faith, not by sight. God is working even now." Chapter 15. The Promise of Transformation. The central message of the Bible is transformation. Over and over it proclaims that old things pass away and all things become new. Fox reminded us that no matter how far we've fallen or how dark life seems, God can remake our lives completely. Transformation doesn't mean we become perfect overnight. It means that the power of God within us reshapes our character, our habits, our relationships, and our entire outlook. The Bible's ultimate symbol of transformation is resurrection. What seems dead can live again. This promise is for everyone. You're never too old, too broken, too guilty, or too far gone. God's creative power is always ready to renew. The key is willingness, to release the old and embrace the new, to stop identifying with limitation and start affirming your true identity as a child of God. Each small step of faith, each act of forgiveness, each moment of prayer, each decision to love rather than hate. All of these are bricks in the new structure of your life. Transformation is built day by day, choice by choice. Here's a story. Angela had battled addiction for years. Relapse after relapse left her hopeless, shattered. She believed that she could never change, that it wasn't possible to stop. Then a friend handed her a small card with the words, "Behold, I make all things new." It was a Bible verse. At first, she dismissed it, but something in her stirred. She kept the card in her pocket, pulling it out during moments of craving. Each time she whispered the words, "All things new." Gradually, hope returned. She began attending recovery meetings, praying daily, and practicing forgiveness towards herself. Months later, Angela was sober. She described her recovery not as sheer willpower, but as a rebirth. The old self had died, a new self had been born. God's promise had proven true. Angela's story is every person's story. Whatever seems hopeless in your life, a habit, a wound, a dream, can be renewed. With God, transformation isn't just possible, it's certain. Exercise. Say aloud 3 times, "With God I am being made new," and carry this truth with quiet confidence through your day. Epilogue. You've now walked through the great spiritual keys of the Bible as Emmet Fox taught them. The Bible as a living guide, the golden key of turning thought to God, the power of spiritual interpretation, God as the source of supply, healing through right thinking, freedom from fear, the necessity of forgiveness, the kingdom within, the law of sowing and reaping, the practice of daily prayer, love as the fulfillment of the law, overcoming obstacles through faith, the presence of Christ within, living by faith, not by sight, and the promise of complete transformation. Each of these is more than an idea. Each is a key that opens doors in your mind, your heart, your soul, and your life. The Bible isn't a closed book. It's a living message. Its stories are your stories. Its promises are your promises. Its victories are your victories. If you take only one truth from this book, let it be this: when you turn your thoughts to God, everything changes for the better. Fear loses its grip, problems lose their weight, and new paths open. The golden key is always in your hand. As you practice these principles, forgiving daily, affirming God's presence, choosing love over resentment, walking by faith rather than sight, you will see transformation unfolding, sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly, but always surely. This isn't theory, it's life. You aren't meant to live in fear, bondage, or despair. You are a child of God, and you are meant to live in freedom, joy, and peace. The kingdom of God is within you. The Christ is alive in you. The promise of renewal is for you. So take these keys, use them daily, open the doors of peace, strength, and joy, and step into the life that God has prepared for you. The key is in your hands, and the door is already waiting to be opened. The end. Thanks for listening. Please drop a like and subscribe to our channel so that you won't miss as we release other motivational and inspirational content. Thank you again for listening. Peace and blessings be upon you and yours. Have a fantastic day.